Today we're talking about the newly released version 3 firmware update for the Sigma FP. But first, if you're new to the channel, my name is Anson, and on this channel we talk about filmmaking, specifically budget gear, tutorials, and a behind the scenes look at the projects that I'm working on. So if that's something you're into, consider subscribing. Recently, Sigma did ask if I want to do some beta testing on their version 3 firmware update for the Sigma FP, and of course, I said yes. And so after I realized that beta software wasn't going to brick my camera, I had a lot of fun with it, and I want to talk to you guys about what I think about this new firmware update, as well as some specifics about what it involves. So a couple of things that it does include is some autofocus fixes. I did throw the 24-70 Sigma on this camera to test out some of the autofocus. I still felt like I was hunting a lot when it was trying to autofocus, and in low light scenarios there was still some flickering that was happening. And so while this firmware does help some of the autofocus issues, I don't know how much of that's improved. So beyond autofocus, a couple other things that this includes is the new color profiles, which is duotone and powder blue. These color profiles were released with the FPL, but now they're coming to the FP. Another thing that comes with this firmware release is that you can save a lot of your settings using QR codes. We saw this with the launch of the FPL, where they're introducing this ability to scan QR codes with your camera and get some of those same exposure settings as well as white balance settings. With this update, they're also giving you more options when you're setting up your custom buttons on the Sigma FP. So now if you have your wheel and you click up, down, left, or right, you may have some more options there. I can't verify it, but I think you also get some more options with the quick select feature on the Sigma FP. I actually use the quick select options way more than the custom buttons, and I found that you can actually do a lot more with it. I was able to put Super 35 mode on the quick select, which I can't really tell you if I could do that before because I maybe just haven't dove into it enough, but I can tell you have a lot of options between the custom buttons and the quick select options as well. Another thing that's super helpful for filmmakers is now you can do custom frame guides. This gives you a lot more flexibility when you're setting up frame guides to where you don't have to go with what is pre-selected for you. So that's a really nice feature to have for filmmakers, is the custom frame guides. Now, along the idea with frame guides, and it actually wasn't in the official announcement for the version 3 update, is the fact that your Viewfinder does have the support for Red Komodo now. And so if your production is using a Red Komodo, now with the Sigma FP, you can use the Director Viewfinder for that Red Komodo, which is really nice. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I have saved the best for last because this update does give you the ability to use Sigma's EVF, the one that you can use on the FPL and comes with some of the FPLs. You can now use them on the Sigma FP. The EVF is something I really didn't talk about when I did my review of the FPL because I couldn't use it with the FP and give you a side-by-side comparison if you were to use it with the FP and the FPL. But now you can use the Viewfinder with the FP, which is a really nice feature. And so instead of using that huge Viewfinder you fix onto the back of the camera, you can actually use the new Sigma EVF-11 with the FP, which is amazing. And honestly, probably the only reason why most people will upgrade to the new firmware. And so that's kind of like the main event of this firmware update. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I recommend to update to this new firmware, because you can use that EVF with the Sigma FP. So those are some of the major features that come with this firmware update. So after using this for a while, what are some of my final thoughts and what do I think about this update? I do wish the firmware did give you the ability to charge while recording, but unfortunately that's not an option. I do think things like the custom frame guides is really nice. I do think the ability to support the Red Komodo and the Viewfinder option is also really nice, especially if you're using a Red Komodo in your production. And so those two features are really the thing that stand out for filmmakers for me. And obviously this channel is geared towards filmmakers and indie filmmakers. And so if those two reasons are enough, then by all means update your firmware. But aside from that, if you do want to use the Sigma EVF-11, that is absolutely the reason to do the firmware update, giving you the ability as an FP owner now to buy the EVF-11 and use it with your FP so that you can take advantage of all the things that an EVF has to offer. As a filmmaker, I think EVFs are super important, especially tilting EVFs, because if you're doing a lower shot, you can look down into the EVF to see your overall composition and exposure. And so with that, definitely check out the Firmware 3 update for the Sigma FP. I do want to thank Sigma for letting me test this out and see what I think about this firmware update. And again, if you do have questions about the firmware update, let me know in the comments below. I may not have the answer right away, but I can talk to Sigma to see if I can get some answers. And so that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like. And if you're digging the overall content from the channel, consider subscribing. Go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Stay safe. Be happy. support each other, wash those hands, and I'll see you here next time. Peace. I don't know what's happening here. Back over my right shoulder. That's my left shoulder, but okay.
To me, it's the right.
It's, well, biologically, it's my left. Let's try that again.